The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another edition of Music Weekly here on the Nerdcast Empire. Believe it or not, this is our 18th edition of Music Weekly, our 70th episode of our podcast on this Sunday evening, and we are live on twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire. Great to have you along with us. I am Matt in the studio once again. This is a week we've really been looking forward to because as you put this list together, and we'll introduce Mike, who always puts this list together. First off, how's it going?
It's going great. Like I tried to say earlier, we've been talking about this week several times on previous streams leading up to this, and it was brutal because there was so much good music. It's certainly not a bad problem to have, and I'm excited to actually finally get into it live here tonight.
Yeah, this is, without exaggeration, maybe the best week of music we've ever had. And we've had a lot of great music. Again, this is the 18th edition of Music Weekly, our 70th episode of our podcast. This is a few weeks now we've been doing this live on Twitch, and we certainly appreciate everybody checking us out. Appreciate Chris from Parts Unknown in the studio, getting ready to work his long days at work. And we appreciate him stopping by and joining us. He'll be back on the podcast here soon once his schedule normalizes a little bit. But this week, again, just a phenomenal week of music, and we're going to get into that. And this week, for those listening on the VOD on Twitch, or if you're listening to us live, or if you join us on YouTube, you're going to get a chance to hear some honorable mention songs this week because we had so much good music that we couldn't contain it within our weekly picks. So we're going to actually spotlight 7 bands as honorable mention this week. If you're listening on the podcast version, you're only going to get our regular weekly picks because we don't actually include the song clips anyway. So if you want to hear the podcast as God intended, you're going to want to check out our live feed on Twitch. You're going to want to check out the VOD on Twitch. You're going to want to check out our YouTube VOD as well. So that's where you're going to get all that. One thing we want to do, we always try to do kind of some news headlines, and I think this is timely, so we want to just start off with a news article from metalinjection.net. It talks about Black Sabbath's 1970 debut has seen a 2,800% spike in sales. According to a report by Forbes, the album sold 3,365 copies in the past tracking period, which is, considering they only sold 116 copies the period before that, is pretty crazy. It landed Black Sabbath at number 6 on the Billboard's vinyl albums chart and at number 23 on the top album sales chart. And again, this album was from 1970. It is 54 years old. But something that you and I have been talking about a lot is this new trend of vinyl reissues, vinyl issues with albums. And we're seeing this now as bands are basically reissuing the vinyls from these old albums, and all the collectors go crazy. They go out and buy this, and the album shows up back in the charts again. And it feels like that this is probably going to be a continuing trend going forward.
Yeah, and I certainly hope so. I think they've finally found something tangible that they can sell to the fan base, especially when you have something as old as the original Black Sabbath album. I think there are people who likely had it on vinyl a long time ago and are certainly looking to have that thing in their hands again. One thing that strikes me as interesting about it, as I've been kind of looking for physical copies of some of the bands we've talked about here, is that I know, like, if, for instance, this Black Sabbath album, if I were to buy it on Amazon, the limited edition vinyl, it has the same, like, auto-rip offer that they have on a lot of their new music, where I'll get the MP3s for the album even though I'm buying the vinyl. So I think if you offer that to people, why would you not just want to collect the vinyl just as a collector's item, knowing you're still going to get the highest quality digital audio that you can have on your phone or your media player, whatever you want to do?
And I think that's the catch. Like, I don't want to buy a vinyl and that be the only means by which I'm getting this album, nor do I want to buy a cassette, especially a cassette, and have that be the only means. Because we've talked about over the last week or so, for whatever reason, cassettes are making a comeback. But again, if that is bundled with an album, if it's bundled with the digital files that you can have that best quality possible for an album, then I can see where it would appeal, not just to like the hardcore record collectors, but I think just music fans in general. Because something we talked about off the air that's kind of worth mentioning, and we've mentioned it many times on this music podcast, is you have quite the CD collection.
Yeah.
It's very extensive. But I feel like this new trend of these vinyl releases is giving you pause as to, do I need to continue to collect the physical CD, or should I get the special vinyl release as long as I'm getting the digital files with it?
Yeah, and I think that is what's important, because I do have a large CD collection, but if I'm not given the digital files to begin with, I'm just going to rip the CD onto my PC, keep it on my network storage and put it on my media player, and that's how I listen to my music. My car is certainly new enough to have all of those connectivity features. I don't bring my CD binder like the 90s with me and flip CDs in and out of my car player. That's just not how I do it. But there is something really cool about the art collectability of the vinyl. You have the gigantic album artwork, and I've seen sites, I think you can get them in normal retailers, but I've seen kind of nicer ones on Facebook where they've advertised their website, where you can buy like a 3x3 like hanger essentially for a wall that you can put your records in and kind of display them as a piece of art. And I think that's really cool. So, it does kind of make me wonder, for certain albums, do I really need the CD, or should I go a different direction? If I'm still listening to the digital anyway, what's it really matter?
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with that. Now, I wonder, for these smaller bands that we talk about a lot on this podcast, I wonder what the costs are involved with getting a physical vinyl release of your album, because you've mentioned some of these bands have had that release that you could get. I wonder, where's the break-even point? Like, do they have to sell so many? Can they order them in small orders where you don't have all this overhead of a bunch of albums sitting around that haven't sold? Like, I'm curious kind of what that process looks like in 2024 compared to what it looked like in the heyday of vinyl, when you probably had to order 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 to be able to justify printing them. Now I just wonder if you can almost do them in single album runs. If Mike gets on the website and orders an album, they can just basically press it and send it to you, and they're not really out anything.
Yeah, I really have no idea what the production costs are, what the profit margin is on selling these. I mean, you have websites that I check out every now and then. One of them is Real Gone Music, that seems to do kind of like the limited run games thing, where they'll pick back catalog music releases and have a limited run of vinyl on them. A while back, I bought Saigon Kick's Water through this website, which was like the anniversary set of it, kind of a collector's item. But clearly, they're selling these anywhere from $20 to $40. They must be making a good amount of money per record, I would think.
And I would love to know what some of our listeners think. So, reach out to us. Let us know what you think about these vinyl releases and cassette releases, I guess, too. But, kind of what you think as far as being able to go back and collect, classic albums that way, as you mentioned, as much for an art piece as for a music medium, because I think outside of the occasional novelty, if you have friends over and you have your record player and, you put an album on, just be like, hey, look, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But overall, like, if you're going to listen to music, you're probably most of the time just going to listen to the digital version. But it's interesting to see this trend and how it's really taking off now.
And another thing that's kind of interesting about it from a collector standpoint is a lot of times they're pressing these records in like weird colors and different patterns and whatnot. It's not like all just the old school black vinyl. They're definitely going that extra step to try to make it presentable.
Yeah, I think I just either on Instagram or YouTube or somewhere I got recommended a video that showed how they did like multicolored, crazy colored vinyl albums, and it's an interesting process, but it's definitely not what you think when you think of a traditional record. Like, it definitely looks, they're marketing not just the cover, but the actual product itself is a collector's item in and of itself. So wild stuff. I'm kind of curious, again, listeners who tune in, reach out to us on our Facebook or on X or even in the comments or maybe even on the VOD YouTube. Let us know if you're excited about this new vinyl push or even the cassette push, and let us know what you think, because I'm certainly interested to see where this trend goes as we move forward. But we're going to get to some new music now. Again, if you're listening on the podcast version of this, we're going to jump ahead to our picks for the week, and so we're going to go ahead and do that now. If you're still with us, which means you're on Twitch or on YouTube, we're going to go through a section of honorable mentions. And honestly, normally when you think of honorable mentions, you think, oh, they just weren't as good. This isn't really the case. Like, this is one of those weeks where I really feel like the 7 songs and bands that we are going to mention as honorable mention are worthy of our full pick for a given week. That's how good so much of the stuff was this week. And there are probably even more that we could have picked and maybe some weeks would have picked had the quality of the overall releases been down. But this was such an outstanding week that we're actually going to feature 11 bands and 7 of them in this honorable mention section that we're going to basically just introduce. Mike will give you a quick where they're from, what the album is, and then we're going to play the clip of the song, and then we're going to move on to the next one. But we wanted to make sure we give these bands flowers because, Mike, I said, I don't know if we've had a week quite like this before.
Yeah, I seriously regretted not choosing some of these, but I thought, man, how long would it take to spend considerable amount of time diving into each of these live on the podcast? I listened to the majority of most of these and really enjoyed all of them, and they're definitely ones I'm considering adding to my collection.
Yeah, no question about it. I think there's some of the stuff that is absolutely going to end up getting purchased. It's just a case where, we just only had so many slots. And so rather than choose 4 bands each, we're going to kind of create this. And we may not use this every week. There may not be that many necessary every week. But if we do have some that just fall outside of the ones we picked, or we just have a week like this where there's just so much music, we may bring back the honorable mention section in future episodes. But let's get started. We're going in alphabetical order for these 7, so no preference to one or the other. But like I said, if you like what you hear, pick up the albums, the physical albums of these 7 bands that we're about to spotlight a song from, because I was really blown away. I think all 7 of these are worthy of your support, and just really excited to bring you a little clip of their music. Let's start, Mike. Tell us a little bit about Age of Distraction.
Yeah, Age of Distraction has their newest album, A Game of Whispers. They are a band from the United Kingdom playing prog rock and metal.
Yeah, really great stuff. We're going to play just a clip of their song, the title track, actually, A Game of Whispers. So let's check that out now here on this kind of special honorable mention list here on our Music Weekly show. Yeah, that's, again, just really great stuff. Really enjoyed that. Excited to hear more from those guys. Definitely check out Age of Distraction, A Game of Whispers. Just really good stuff. And again, that was the title track, A Game of Whispers. We're going to move on next as I cue these up as we go forward. This is a little interesting to kind of put this all together, but we're going to talk about Black Diamonds. Tell me a little bit about them, Mike.
Yeah, Black Diamonds. They are a melodic rock and metal band from Switzerland, and they are, or just have now on May 31st, released their next album, Destination Paradise.
And one thing we should mention, these are the album releases of May 31st. I don't think I mentioned that. And Mike will share his playlist at some point in the chat that will go through all the music. You can go through each and every song that we had from this week. But now we're going to check out a song, After the Rain, from Destination Paradise, the newest album from Black Diamonds. So let's check that out now. Well, maybe. Give me just a second.
Out of the blue, baby, I made you like lightning, lighting up the sky. You crashed into my life, lightning, set the night on fire, melting my heart away. Oh, my pain, along with all those rainy days.
Yeah, again, just really like the sound of these guys. Oop. I soloed Mike's microphone instead of unmuting it. So again, the technical issues here. I believe now we're both unmuted and ready to go. But
All right.
but again, great sound, great look. Just I think everything about them definitely worth checking out. So check those guys out again. Black Diamond's album is Destination Paradise. That was a little bit of After the Rain. All right, as we move forward and I try to get the next one queued up without pushing the wrong buttons, tell us a little bit about Cobra the Impaler.
Yeah, it's funny when you go back and listen to these again, you're hit with that regret of like, man, maybe I should have picked that band. What was I thinking? Yeah, Cobra the Impaler. They are from Belgium. They are a progressive metalcore band, and they are here with their latest album, Karma Collision, with really cool artwork, I might add.
Yeah, I really like the artwork on this one. Really outstanding. This is actually a bit of the title track, which is Karma Collision from Cobra the Impaler. Let's check that out now.
Bloody dominion, defend against the silence within. Rush it first into karma collision. Live forever beyond the terror. Become the hurricane from fire that's in human skin. Live forever into the Nestor within the silent war. Echoes linger on to the void.
Yeah, again, I just really enjoyed these guys. Again, the album is one of the most outstanding albums
Yeah.
of the week, the album art. So definitely check that out. Cobra the Impaler, Karma Collision from the album Karma Collision as well. So definitely check that one out. I'm not sure the pronunciation of this next one. It's spelled Euge. I don't know if that's huge or
That's huge.
Euge. I'm not sure. Valovirta with the album Hard Tones. Tell us a little bit about Hard Tones.
Yeah, so he's a really well-renowned guitarist from Finland. This is his latest album. It's really hard to pin down what you would call his style. In my notes, I kind of referred to it as hair/death metal. It's kind of got some sleazy vibes to it too. It's really cool, and it was probably kind of the first team out on my list this week.
Yeah, it definitely has a very unique sound. And this song we're going to check out is the song Testify. It features Sammy Albana. It is off of the album I jumped my line. Hard Tones. And again, Euge Valovirta. And let's check a little bit of that out now. Again, this is the song Testify.
Oh, now turn the lights on for me, so you can see what I mean. It's time to look alive. Come on and testify. Now turn the lights on for me, so you can see what I mean. It's time to look alive. Come on and testify.
Yeah, I wanted to pick that specific spot out because I really like that guitar part after the chorus, too.
Kind of gives you like Slash vibes a bit.
Yeah, I really...
That guitar riff.
I mean, again, the sleaze part you can definitely hear, but I also, like you said, you do feel like Slash, like the Guns N' Roses sound. I just really enjoyable. Definitely check that out. Euge Valovirta with Testify. That's the song Testify from the album Hard Tones out this week. Another band that I was certainly familiar with, I think most fans of this genre will certainly have heard of, Halcyon Way. Tell us a little bit about their new release.
Yeah, Halcyon Way. They're with a 3-track EP, Nightcrawling. They're a progressive metal band from Georgia, and this was actually another one that I was really close to picking as well.
Yeah, these guys are really good. Great to see them releasing some new stuff. And the EP is Nightcrawling, as Mike mentioned. This is the title track, Nightcrawling. We're going to listen to a little bit of it. Really good stuff from them. Like I said, I've definitely heard some of their stuff before, so no surprise that they find the list once again. So let's listen to a little bit of Nightcrawling from Halcyon Way.
Sometimes I need your loving. Sometimes I stab you in the back. I found meaning, just what I needed. Cut on the bathroom wall. Midnight reflection, craving attention under the disco ball.
Yeah, again, really good sound. These guys have been good for a long time, so great to hear them releasing a new EP. I think that's going to do really well.
Yeah.
So we will make sure you check out Halcyon Way. Night Crawling, again, EP, just came out on May 31st. 2 more left on our honorable mention list this week. Mike, tell us about Ian Highhill.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to jump into his website and actually read some of his bio. I thought that was the best way to kind of approach this. Right at the top of the bio, born amidst the cold forests and frozen lakes of Finland, clad in leather and spikes, tirelessly spreading the message of the Old Metal Testament through cryptic lyrics, haunting melodies, and doomy riffs. That's what Ian Highhill has done his entire life. He lists his influences Ronnie James Dio, Rob Halford, Ian Gillan, John Fogerty, and David Byron. As I kind of alluded to, he's a Finnish singer. He is here with his newest album, Gallows, and it's definitely melodic hard rock metal.
Yeah, the next two, this one and the next one, were definitely right there for me. Because, I mean, when you talk about Finland melodic hard rock, that's pretty much right down my alley as far as the stuff I really like. I thought the next two bands really nailed it, and I thought Ian Highhill, like you said, almost a crazy description, really kind of sets you up for what this is going to sound like.
And now reading the description, like his bio, and now looking at the album artwork next to each other, yeah, it all makes sense, actually.
It totally does. I think you're going to enjoy this. This is a song called Gallows Avenue from the release Gallows from Ian Highhill. Let's check out a little bit of that.
When darkness descends upon our graves, we will come back for you. We will no longer be your slaves. When we take you down to Gallows Avenue.
Yeah, I wanted to leave that musical interlude in there too, because it just kind of felt like a right turn from what the chorus sounded like, and almost like a medieval sounding rock there a little bit.
Definitely got like 70s, like proto metal vibes out of that. That was really cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Ian Highhill with Gallows, and that, of course, the song was Gallows Avenue from the release Gallows. Definitely check that out. The last one we have for you on our honorable mentions list, again, I was really close to picking this band from Northwest Indiana, so it's always great to see a band that's somewhat local to us make our list. Let's talk about Idle Throne.
Yeah, it's amazing. Before we started this podcast venture, I didn't know that there were bands in the States making music like this. You don't run into it all that often, but yeah, this is Idle Throne from Indiana. They're a thrash, power, and prog metal band with their newest album, A Clarion Call.
Yeah, this is really great stuff. Again, this is, if I would have had 3 picks, this probably would have been my 3rd pick this week. Really, really good. Let's check out a little bit of the title track, A Clarion Call from the band Idle Throne.
Feel my heart pulling west again. Distant horizon, my only friend. No designs on what waits for me there. I'll find it in the end. And the passage of time will keep us locked inside our minds. If we should fail to reach for a dream that feels alive, by a journey unknown, voices they beckon me home.
Yeah, I mean, we could listen to that all day. I mean, and I guess they've already mentioned us on Facebook, as has Age of Distraction, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah,
And,
that's awesome.
one thing we've talked about on our Twitch channel is that we're working on trying to get to 50 follows. So if you like what you hear from this podcast, please just drop us a follow. It doesn't cost you a dime, but it allows us to eventually, hopefully, monetize this and allow us to continue to do more really cool things. But it's awesome to have 7 more acts that we could spotlight this week, because it's totally
Yeah.
unprecedented.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be a sign of things to come as we enter the summer months. Is that just kind of the prime time for album releases? I haven't looked ahead to what came out this first week of June, so I'll be anxious to see what's out there.
And if you're rejoining us on the podcast edition, well, you missed out on the honorable mentions. As we mentioned, that's only going to be on the Twitch VOD and the YouTube VOD, or if you listen to us live on twitch.tv. Generally, every Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time and East Coast U.S. time, we will be with you. If you're listening in Europe, you're listening in Asia, it'll be early Monday morning that we bring you the rock, and back to the old Music Mondays when we used to release this on Mondays before we started doing it live. But just again, as if you're joining us on the podcast version, make sure you check us out live. You get to hear a lot more great music, and you'll get to hear the clips that'll be coming up in this podcast because, of course, it is that time where we will get to the 4 bands that we have chosen, 2 each, and we will play a clip of their new album as well. And again, for any of these 11 bands, like they could have been in this slot here, it's just, we do kind of talk a little bit more about the bands that get into this slot, so we didn't want to have to talk about 11 bands and do a 3-hour podcast. Maybe somewhere down the road, if we're getting great numbers, once we get to monetization or whatever, maybe we'll end up doing that. Who knows? But for now, just to keep it at a reasonable length and keep the prep time reasonable, we're going to keep it to 2 each. And Mike, you're the one that gets to lead us off here as you put this list together each and every week. So what do you have for us first?
Yeah, this is great. I will tell you my 2 main picks, and people can then judge whether I chose the correct 2 out of all the ones that we've listed so far.
I don't think there was a bad choice. I think regardless of how you would have went about it, I think it's just great stuff all the way around.
So yeah, this first one that I got for you, this is from a band that started back in 1979. They ran from 79 to 90. Disappeared for 10 years, came back in 2000, and are still around now. It looks like only their bassist is the member who's still around from 1979. But yeah, that being said, this band is Cloven Hoof, and their newest album, Heathen Cross.
One thing for sure I can say about this, because honestly, because we've had so much music this week, I didn't get a chance to go too deep on your 2 picks, but the album cover is really great on this one, and it definitely gives you an idea what this is going to sound like.
Oh, absolutely. The second I saw it when I was pulling tracks for the playlist, I'm like, yeah, this one. I haven't listened to it yet, but I know it's they're already setting the bar where I think this is going to be a keeper, and it did not disappoint. Cool thing is, this is actually the first album that features the longtime Jag Panzer vocalist, Harry Conklin, which he definitely makes his presence felt. Starts out with this orchestral epic intro track that leads into Redeemer, and you hear Conklin, whose vocals are kind of Halford meets Dio with maybe a little King Diamond in there at times. It works so well with this classic British heavy metal delivery, because this band is, from 79, they are certainly one of the players in the new wave of British heavy metal, and they don't disappoint, and they don't sound like a band that's been around since 1979. The music sounds fresh.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how many of these bands have been doing this for so long, and yet we're just now being introduced to them on this podcast, and it's another great example of a band that has hung around and is still making amazing music.
Yeah, and the songs, as you go through the album, they kind of have a couple different flavors. They have a lot of really classic metal anthems, songs like Last Man Standing. They have a lot of songs with occult themes, like Curse of the Gypsy. And then you kind of get both that fit in, or songs that fit into both categories, like the Aleister Crowley-inspired Do What Thou Wilt. That being said, standout tracks, we're looking at Redeemer, Do What Thou Wilt, Last Man Standing, Curse of the Gypsy, Sabbath Stones, and The Summoning. The song I have picked out for us tonight is Do What Thou Wilt. It's a great song, and definitely sing-along-y chorus.
I think that's always great when you can get something you can sing along to, especially when multiple listens to this. This, again, is Cloven Hoof with Heathen Cross, and the track is Do What Thou Wilt. Let's check out a little bit of that now here on Music Weekly on the Nerdcast Empire. I think the one thing I love about metal music in particular is when it's fun. I think it's just so much easier to get into it. And listening to this track, it just sounds fun. It sounds like something you want to get up and bang your head to and sing along with and hear it live, I think, especially. And this is just really outstanding stuff.
Yeah, the whole album just to me feels like it's Vakken ready. Like that is where you're going to hear it, and it's going to resonate with everybody. And I don't know. To me, like I said, this doesn't sound like a band that's been around forever, just churning out another album. And granted, I know they only have one original member, but the lead singer's been around a really long time too, and they definitely sound like a fresh band.
I think that's always nice when you have a band that has been able to, and sometimes you switch so many members out. Like what do you have that's really the core of that band, and you also wonder, like, can you continue to sustain it when you have so many new members or different members over the years? And yet they seem to have found a way to almost reinvent themselves without, like, straying away from the original message. Like, it still sounds very new wave of British heavy metal without sounding dated in the late 70s, early 80s, almost a modern take on it, which I think if you can do that, there's room for your album to reach a whole new audience.
Absolutely.
So really exciting stuff. Definitely check out Cloven Hoof with Heathen Cross, Mike's first pick of this week. Really outstanding album. You've got 2 picks, as you always do each and every week. And what do you have for pick number 2?
Yeah, so pick number 2, actually, when I first played them off the playlist, I'm like, yeah, these guys have some potential. I could get into more of this. And I listened to more of it without really reading into the band, and I just thought, man, this stuff is phenomenal. Like, it hits so many different areas while still kind of being this, dark, melodic, kind of progressive metal sound. It wasn't until I read more about the band that I kind of realized why they're so good. But all that being said, this is the 4th full-length album from an LA-based dark melodic metal band. The band is Witherfall, and the album is Sounds of the Forgotten.
Well, the album art certainly makes you think dark melodic. It's definitely got that somber feel, the nighttime sky, the giant moon. Like, it's got that vibe to it. But yeah, this is not what I expected when you started telling me about this band, because they've got a lot of interesting ties to other bands and other famous musicians that kind of makes sense why they might be your pick this week.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when I was listening to them, I started drawing comparisons to other bands, thinking, okay, yeah, it kind of sounds like that, not even realizing that there's a very good reason why it sounds the way it does. This was a band formed by the lead guitarist and songwriter Jake Dreyer, who was formerly the lead guitarist for Iced Earth and Demons and Wizards for their 3rd album, as well as he spent time with Jagdpanzer. So, we're bringing that band back into this. You can definitely hear some Iced Earth in their sound, but when listening to it, the other bands that I really thought about were Sanctuary and Nevermore. I thought the vocalist definitely had like some Warrell Dane properties to him. But going back to the guitarist, in an interview with Noise Creep, he mentioned that he got inspired to play guitar at the age of 6 after hearing Hell's Bells, but eventually got into heavier bands like Megadeth and Testament, and then ultimately said it was hearing Yngwie Malmsteen that was the moment that really changed his life as a guitarist. And there are some tracks on here where it'll go from being super heavy to next he's playing a classical guitar, some sort of Spanish-inspired guitar solo. So you can definitely hear that neoclassical influence every now and then. That being said, I mentioned that I thought they kind of sounded like Sanctuary. I then found out that the lead singer of this band, Joseph Michael, actually became the singer of Sanctuary after Warrell Dane passed away. So that kind of blew my mind. From the first time I heard him scream on the song "They Will Let You Down," followed by Dreyer's ridiculous guitar lick, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. What more do you guys got for me? That first track comes out really heavy and ominous, and then the next track is like a slower, more emotional song, Where Do I Begin? And you can really hear some of the vocal chops of Joseph Michael on that song. It was kind of through further research into the singer that I found out that he's actually the cousin of Ronnie James Dio.
That's crazy.
Evidently, he said that he never met Dio, but that's just not what I was expecting to find out.
But clearly, music taste and music talent runs in that family, even across maybe to a cousin, because not to say this guy's Ronnie James Dio, but clearly he's got a talent for doing this.
Yeah, this guy has some crazy vocal range, just as far as styles, octaves. It's really amazing. Moving on the album, you have a track like Insidious, which is harder than the other tracks, but has, again, crazy variances in the vocal delivery. And then also that's where Dreyer just busts out randomly in the middle of a song this classical sounding guitar solo. It just was not expecting that. Another kind of interesting thing about this band is I was going through their album on YouTube, and they have music videos for the vast majority of the songs from this album. I just, in a day where I kind of assumed music videos were irrelevant or passé or just not necessary, I thought it was really cool to see these guys take that step and really promote their music that way.
Yeah, I think it's very unique. It's funny because everybody who's our age has probably seen or shared the meme that's come out this week with the, it's MTV's 43 years old, thank you for the 14 years of music or something like that.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, that's kind of fitting. You don't see a lot of that. But when bands take that effort, I think it takes them to a different level.
Absolutely. And I was trying to see if I could find where I copy and paste it. On one of their music videos, I was looking down at the comments, and someone commented, I'll admit it, I clicked on the YouTube ad because I saw the spooky lady in the thumbnail. Good song, though. And you're like, see, mission accomplished. They created these music videos and brought in a new listener just based on the visual. So it's definitely not dead by any means.
And it's great when you can find new ways to get listeners, whatever it takes to get them in the door. You get them in the door, you get them hooked on the music, and then you've made a fan for life.
Absolutely. Some of the other standout tracks beyond what I mentioned and including what I mentioned, They Will Let You Down, Where Do I Begin, Insidious, Ceremony of Fire, Sounds of the Forgotten, and When It All Falls Away. The song I've picked out here is Sounds of the Forgotten. Just enjoy.
Yeah, let's check them out. This is Witherfall with Sounds of the Forgotten. This is the title track off of the album Sounds of the Forgotten. Let's check that out now.
Untaken, and the lives we've forsaken, like shadows growing closer. Once again left to wane amidst the coming storm. What are we in this for? The core has turned and rotten, as the years just spin on by, to the sounds of the forgotten. Why should we even care? The shores align with gray, so seize the day, 'cause in the end, meet the sounds of the forgotten.
Yeah, definitely heard the Ronnie James Dio in there a little bit. Just you kind of heard some of that. It felt very rainbow-ish with Dio there. But that's just really good. Chris mentioned in the chat, band could have been called Small World. Like, it kind of feels that way, that it's amazing, all the spider webs of connections with this band, but really talented.
Yeah, absolutely. And I strongly encourage people to check this album out. There's a track even later on that's basically just like I want to say about a 2-minute like classical guitar like solo song. It's just an amazing album.
Yeah, great stuff. Again, check them out. Both of Mike's picks this week. Actually, we got the honorable mention picks, both of Mike's regular picks. Really great stuff this week. I'm really excited about these two picks that I had because this first band I knew was going to end up on one of our two lists because this is one of the best things I've heard during the entire run of this show. Just blown away that not only is this type of music being made in 2024, but that it's being made by a band in Sweden. If you'd have told me this band grew up down the road from us,
Small town Ohio, Sweden.
yes, like totally blown away by this band. The band is Nestor. The album is Teenage Rebel. They are an AOR 80s rock band from Sweden, formed in 1989. They had a couple of EPs along the way, kind of went their separate ways. Didn't really break up as much as they just didn't really do anything together from 1995 on to 2021 when they released the album Kids in a Ghost Town. It's just stunning to believe that this band is from Sweden, because when you hear this track that I'm going to play, it just sounds like they absolutely should be from small town America, just very much like the town we grew up in. It's amazing, and it makes you think that the world is a smaller place than maybe we even realize. That so many of us, a lot of times you see the differences and don't think that maybe it's a lot more similar than we think. When you read the influences of this band, because there was a great article from a Canadian website that kind of interviewed them back in 2021, and they kind of talked about some of the influences, but it's like you run down the list: Kiss, Van Halen, Europe, Queensrÿche, Giant, King's X, Toto, Rush, Yngwie Malmsteen, among others. Of course, like, it's exactly why this stuff sounds the way it does. This album is phenomenal. Can't encourage enough that you pick this up. It's a front to backer for me. Intro track was kind of interesting, kind of set things up. That Rebel, I think, is who you hear in the first song. And then it really is just, again, feels like small town America, but in Sweden instead. Standout tracks, We Come Alive, Last to Know, Victorious, Caroline, and the song we're going to play, which is the title track, Teenage Rebel. Again, can't say enough good things. This is one of my favorite groups that we've done on this show since we started this. The band, again, is Nestor, and the album is Teenage Rebel. And we're going to check out the title track, Teenage Rebel. And I don't have that song queued up, so let me do that real quick, because I have the wrong one queued up. So we will try to get that where we need to get it, and we will do that, and we'll listen to it now.
We used to say tomorrow is far away. Now that I know it's close as yesterday, so come with me. I wanna feel it, the hunger. 16 and nothing's gonna hold me down. 'Cause all I do is run, run, run. I always been a dreamer, a believer. I set the world on fire. I don't care if I go down alone in burning flames like a teenage rebel.
Honestly, I wish we could just listen to the whole album, because it's so good. And, I've been listening to this and trying to think of, like, where that influence comes from. Because as I mentioned, there's a ton of influences they list. But that song in particular feels like it could have been the B-side for Night Ranger's You Can Still Rock in America.
Yes.
Like, it just has that same vibe to it, the same feeling. Like, it just really could be two sides of the same coin. I know you kind of tipped me off to this band because as you were going through your list, and we've watched some of their live performances. These guys are great.
Yeah, it's one of those bands that when I'm pulling the tracks for the playlist, my eyes just kind of light up when I see it. Like, oh, this is really going to be something. I'm sure of it. Yeah, I was thinking also Night Ranger. Like, when you close your eyes, like, it kind of has that feel to it. Kind of interesting. You mentioned that intro track. I was not familiar of what the Law of Yanta was, so I looked it up. It's actually a reference to a literary work by Danish-Norwegian author Axel Sandemos. It's come to represent the egalitarian nature of Scandinavian countries. It was first used in his satirical novel A Fugitive Crosses His Tracks back from 1933, but essentially it sets out these rules, these 10 rules. You're not to think you're anyone special. You're not to think you're as good as we are. You're not to think you're smarter than we are. You're not to imagine yourself better than we are. And it just kind of goes on, basically trying to like kill any sense of individuality, which leads into the album. So it fits really well, and definitely a cool little touch on an otherwise just really cool 80s inspired album.
And I think you need to check out the music videos. The music video for that particular song is really great. And again, it's amazing to me that this music's coming from a band. And so, like, there should be bands here that are making this kind of music. And we've obviously found some great bands from the U.S. that are making music
maybe
like
we just
this.
haven't seen them yet. We're going to get there.
We could, because I'm really starting to think that those bands are out there, and we're discovering them one week at a time on this podcast. But can't say enough great things about Nestor. I love this.
Another cool thing about Nestor I want to mention, too, the song Victorious has this really cool music video that's like, an 80s sports movie about hockey. It's just check them out.
Yeah, they're awesome. I would love to see these guys in concert if they ever are anywhere nearby. Fantastic, 100%. I love this. It's one of my favorite bands of the year. Check out Nestor with Teenage Rebel. Second pick this week is going to feel some influences from a band that Mike has mentioned on this podcast before. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the band is Auro Control, and the album is called The Harp. They are progressive power metal group from Salvador in Brazil. Founded in 2021. This is their first album. But there's no question when you listen to this, and I know Mike will be able to kind of touch on this more because I know this is a band he's much more familiar with than I am. There's definitely a very strong Angra influence to this band, which makes a ton of sense when you see who's involved in it. The vocalist, Lucas de Oro, absolutely knocks it out of the park. His vocals are fantastic. You've got guitarist Diego Pires and drummer Davi Brito, who came, I believe, from a Dream Theater tribute band. But then you've got the bassist Tiago Bianchi, who came from Shaman originally. The drummer Achilles Priester was working on as well, came from Wasp and ex-Angra. The bassist was from Angra as well, Felipe Andrioli. They also had some guests on there, and we're going to hear one of those guests here in a moment, that being Jeff Scott Soto joining in on this. It was recorded in Sao Paulo. Tiago Bianchi was the one that produced it as well. Just a great power metal album. Just really excited to see where this band goes from here, because for this being their first album, I think they really did a great job. Standout tracks include Feel the Fire, Rise of the Phoenix, Afterglow, Head Up High, which has a great, awesome start to the song, really just gets you pumped up right out of the gate. The song we're going to check out is Not Alone, which does feature the legendary vocalist Jeff Scott Soto, one of my all-time favorite metal vocalists. I love when he shows up in places, and this is a great place for him. So we're going to check these guys out. It's Auro Control. The album is The Harp, and this is one of the tracks from that album. It is Not Alone featuring Jeff Scott Soto. Let's check that out now. And again, I wanted to play the vocals, but I also wanted to leave a little room for the progressive, which came after the vocals, because you definitely got that progressive rock vibe from these guys. I want to throw it to Mike on this one because, again, the Angra influence, which, I mean, one of the reviews was kind of down on it because they thought it was kind of a ripoff of Angra, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm curious as because I know you're much more familiar with Angra, another Brazilian band, your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that you can hear the influence, and obviously having members that are ex-Angra and ex-Shaman, which was an offshoot band from Angra to begin with, you're going to get that. I think that's kind of unavoidable. The review you were referring to, I believe, was the Progressive Subway. Andy from that site did kind of bring up another interesting point about it, obviously, and that's the first track off of the album Temple of Shadows, which seems to be kind of the main focus of that inspiration, is a song called Spread Your Fire. And then on this album, you have, Feel the Fire. So, yeah, there are some similarities. And I think musically, you're going to run into that just based on that region and the members involved. I don't think it's a bad thing when you sound like Angra.
Right.
I'm totally in favor of that.
Yeah, I think more bands sounding like them would be a good thing.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. Another thing I thought was kind of interesting on that song is there's a part where Jeff Scott Soto screams, "Stand up and shout," really noticeably. And I had to assume that was a reference to the 2001 film Rockstar, because in that he actually plays the vocal performances of the lead singer, the original lead singer of the fictional band Steel Dragon, and there's a song where they scream, "Stand up and shout." So I have to assume that's just a call out to that, which was really cool. But Yeah, this band was really enjoyable.
Yeah, Chris mentioning the Jeff Scott Soto mainstay in our podcast, right up there with Bumblefoot. So
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing either.
not at all. So it's great to see all these bands kind of interconnected. But definitely check those guys out. Auro Control with The Harp, their first album, and they've knocked it out of the park with their first release. And that brings our first segment of this show to a close after spotlighting songs from, if you're listening on the live on Twitch or on YouTube, 11 different bands. If you're listening on the podcast, you got our 4 picks. Make sure you check us out live if you can, because that's where you can get all 11. Just really an outstanding week for new music. Again, the music from May the 31st. And again, there were more really good ones on the list. Make sure you check out Mike's playlist, because there were a lot more on there that could have in a normal week been in our choices, but the field was just really tough this week, which is great to see. If you're listening on the podcast version of this, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to go into the vault, where Mike and I will tell you some classic releases you need to check out. We'll do that on the other side of this timeout here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire, Music Weekly is here once again. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Check out our store while you're there. We got a lot of cool merch you can pick up. And again, if you're watching on Twitch, or if you can, go to our Twitch website, twitch.tv/nerdcastempire. Just leave us a follow there. We really appreciate it. It doesn't cost anything. There's no fee to follow anybody. But what it does allows us to continue to work our way up to 50 followers, which then allows us to monetize, which will help us make a little bit of money on this to be able to do some really cool things we would like to do and kind of start getting it into, I would say, getting away from a side project. We already spend a lot of time on this podcast and everything around it. So, but it'd be great to be able to do more cool things and spend more time on it. So please do leave us a follow on Twitch. We'd really appreciate it. Coming up this week, should be noted, Thursday, we will be back here on twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire for another episode of our podcast. This is going to be a Twitch exclusive podcast on Thursday, so you're going to want to check us out here. Mike, as we mentioned, not only does he put together these music lists every week, but he also puts together anime lists, basically ranking songs by season and by year. And on Thursday, we're going to check one of those videos out. I believe we're going to be checking out the best anime themes from 2023. And, of course, YouTube doesn't like when you react to YouTube content on YouTube, which seems really weird. And, of course, the podcast version would just be us introducing the songs and then, not saying anything. So, most likely that's going to be a Twitch exclusive. So, make sure you join us here, 7 o'clock Eastern Thursday. Really excited for that. Mike does a lot of good work. We may try to do that once a month, where we spend our Thursday episode going through this. There you see, if you want a preview of that, we will be watching it and we'll be commenting on it. And then I'll give my take on what I would pick for my top 10. Really looking forward to that. Join us on Thursday at 7 o'clock for that. And then, of course, 1 week from tonight, we'll be back with you with another episode of Music Weekly. We're going to be talking the music of June the 7th. We are into the month of June finally. Of course, you had the extra week in May with the 31st falling on whatever day these releases come out. I just go by the date. But June 7th, we're going to be talking, I guess it'll be Fridays.
Yeah.
We'll be talking the release of June the 7th. June the 7th's got some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have the list in front of us yet, but it's going to be tough to come up with a list. But again, we'll certainly at least have 2 picks per person and our vault pick. And if we find some things that deserve honorable mention, we'll start including those as well. Plus some news headlines. Join us next week. More stuff on the Nerdcast Empire. And we've had a lot of recent podcasts, so please check those out as well. We did a review of WWE Clash at the Castle yesterday. Rachel joined us for that one. That was a lot of fun. We did our Anime Thursdays on Thursday. We did some anime music. Really cool there, unless you're in Russia or Belarus, in which case you might not get a chance to watch that. But everywhere else, should get a chance to check out some of our favorite anime songs. So lots of stuff going on, trying to keep it all straight. But we're going to do our best to do that here on the Nerdcast Empire. Let's get to the vault, where we talk about some classic releases. Both of us kind of have our own gimmicks going on. Mike, you are continuing through the alphabet. We, a few weeks ago, crossed the halfway point. We are headed down the hill of the alphabet. What do you have for us this week?
Yeah, so we've made it all the way to the letter Q. So we are getting toward the end. There were really kind of 2 obvious possible choices for the letter Q, both being similarly named bands, Queen and Queensrÿche. Those definitely are the two that make up the majority of the Q section of my CD collection. That being said, Night at the Opera from Queen was already reviewed recently, so I kind of wanted to steer away from that. So I thought maybe we'll hit up Queensrÿche. I think in a lot of ways, Operation Mindcrime gets a lot of love, and justifiably so. It's a tremendous album, and I kind of wanted to look past that. So for my vault choice tonight, we are going with the 1990 release from Queensrÿche, the tremendous epic album Empire.
And of course, we'll be coming up on a potential choice of Operation Mindcrime in about 6 weeks when we get to 1988. So stay tuned to see if that ends up coming up in the vault for me, because that's one of my favorite albums. But I don't know if I like it better than I like Empire. That is just a phenomenal album, one of my all-time favorite Queensrÿche albums. And again, you could have went with Queen. That's obviously a great pick. We've already talked about Night at the Opera. But this is a phenomenal album.
Yeah, to me, this is peak Queensrÿche. I know the current makeup of the band seems to really, really love those first 2 albums, and the EP and Warning, and maybe to some degree Rage for Order, which I do like, but I think maybe those are getting more love than they need at the expense of something like Empire, which I think is a masterpiece. Silent Lucidity reached number 1 on the mainstream rock tracks, number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. Just an amazing song, and probably why Comfortably Numb is my favorite Pink Floyd song. I mean, it was clear that the Silent Lucidity was inspired by that to a certain degree. The album spawned 4 singles, all great songs. Empire, Best I Can, Silent Lucidity, and Jet City Woman. Was kind of surprised that, according to Wikipedia, anybody listening wasn't listed as a single, nor was Another Rainy Night Without You. Both right up there, top tier songs as well. That being said, the other tracks on the album are really solid as well. The Thin Line, Resistance, Hand on Heart. I could listen to those any day. The thing about Queensrÿche is when you kind of look at this being their 4th album, they're a band that didn't really stay in one place very long. You kind of had the EP and Warning as one thing. Rage for Order came in where they started writing a little more like mainstream rock songs like Walk in the Shadows and Surgical Strike. Operation Mindcrime was a bunch of really good songs that happened to tell a story. And then you have Empire where they abandoned kind of the concept, and they still kind of told stories, but they were just an individual songs, but definitely a little more mainstream focused with their songwriting. And really, this was kind of the end of that, and you moved on after this to Promised Land, which was definitely, I don't want to say what you'd expect them to create in 1994, but it was definitely kind of heading a different direction after that, and you kind of saw that be the case through subsequent albums, and then ultimately kind of the band falling apart. But to me, Empire, one of the best title tracks of all time. The vocal part in the middle of it is still legendary to me. It's just a great album.
It's still, I know, like you said, the modern version of the band tends to steer away from this album, which is kind of why the last time we saw them in concert, even though I enjoyed the performances, you walk away feeling like, man, I didn't hear this, I didn't hear that. Like, at this stage of a band, especially when you've replaced your lead singer, and their new lead singer is amazing, but there are certain tracks where it's like you should always play. Here's like 5 songs. You should play at least 3 of these every time I see you. You don't have to play all 5, but there are some of these like I don't want to walk away not having heard live.
Todd Latour is a great lead singer, but sometimes now when you see them live, it's almost like they're flexing on the fact that he can still sing the really old stuff.
Yeah,
like that's great, and I'm glad. And you can do Queen of the Reich. Any live performance, I'm totally fine with that. You can do Warning. That's, you can do anything from Rage for Order, and I'm cool with that. But man, like, I want to hear Empire. I want to hear Jet City Woman. I want to hear numerous tracks off Mindcrime, which I think probably gets a raw deal because it's such a Jeff Tate. Both Mindcrimes were very much his babies, I think.
I feel like it suffers from the same fate as Mr. Roboto does for Styx.
Yeah.
Because that is so Dennis DeYoung, and it's so panned by so many people, including members of the band that didn't want to go in that direction. But there's great music on that album. that you want to hear live occasionally. Like, I don't think Styx is as bad at running away from it as the new Queensrÿche is from staying away from Mindcrime, but I would almost bet that Mindcrime is going to come up again very soon because it's a phenomenal album. I do have to laugh, though, reading Wikipedia, and I understand music critics can be a special breed, and I don't know how I would feel if I was just constantly reviewing music, because obviously what we do here is in fun.
I'm afraid you get really jaded after a while.
Yeah, but like, you got a quote on here from Jim Farber, who gave this album a D and said that he was highly critical of the album. He criticized both the album's progressive metal riffs, calling them tuneless bombast, and the dire nature of the lyrics. Farber concluded his review by calling the band members relentless killjoys. Did you listen to the same album that I listened to? Because I don't get that vibe at all. Like, again, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and if you're reviewing for a big website like Entertainment Weekly, you're probably reviewing 4, 5, 10, 20 albums a week. I don't know. Like, so, yeah.
And you're ultimately going to have to review things that you're walking into knowing you don't like this band.
Yeah, and maybe that's just it. Maybe he just did not like Queensrÿche and was so negative. Most of the reviews obviously are positive. This album's amazing, but I have to laugh. Like, this dude's an idiot. Like, you don't want to say that about somebody's opinion, especially on something that is subjective, but
He might have had a really bad day that day. We don't know.
that's very, very true, for sure.
Going back to Queensrÿche, I talk about Empire kind of being peak Queensrÿche, and I believe that, but taking nothing away from some of their later albums, I really enjoyed 1997's Here in the Now Frontier, 2003 Tribe. That was different, but still really enjoyable. And Mindcrime 2 is actually kind of underrated. I think it's more of a story that happens to have some pretty good songs, unlike the first Mindcrime, which was a bunch of great songs that had a story. But yeah, they had good stuff that I don't know if they'll ever really come back and touch with this version of the band.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be hard to recreate that, but they are still out there. Please go see them and support them. But this is just about as good as it got. I mean, a lot of those stuff was really good, but this is we're at the peak of the mountain for Queensrÿche, the album Empire. So definitely check that out. I'm going through year by year. We are now up to 1982. We have still not gotten into Mike's lifespan with this album.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. We're very close. This album was released in March 29th, 1982, and the album is great. But I think what the album signifies is maybe as important as the album itself. The choice this week, and there were a lot of really good choices, but the choice this week is Iron Maiden's The Number of the Beast, again released in March of 1982. It was their first album with Bruce Dickinson as their lead singer, which of course is why this is so important and why this album really took off. It became the band's first album to top the UK album charts and reach the top 40 of the US Billboard 200. Only technically 2 singles on this, both of them huge songs. Run to the Hills is probably one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs. And then, of course, the title track, The Number of the Beast. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy around this album, especially in 1982. Anytime you're dealing with anything that can be deemed as like Satanism, you're going to draw a lot of attention. But only an 8-track album, but really great. Hallowed Be Thy Name, also on that second side. Great, obviously, as well. But, this is where this band, went from being a very good band to a band that was going to be legendary when you add someone like Bruce Dickinson, who even to this day is still amazing and still can belt out the songs. It's interesting. Did notice we've been talking about cassettes a lot. In 2022, they did release a new cassette version of this album for the 40th anniversary of the original release. That was before I even knew cassettes were coming back, so that's kind of crazy. But just great stuff. It's a front to backer, I think. It's only, like I said, 8 songs, about just under 40 minutes, but this is such an important album. In metal history, it's such an important album for Iron Maiden, and so it really made it a no-brainer of a choice for 1982 to go with The Number of the Beast as my choice for this week. Mike, I know you're a fan of this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But before I get to that, the Belmonts, the kind of side project of the video game rock band The Megas, they released an EP of basically like Castlevania music, but I bought it on Bandcamp back in 2016, and that was the one that came as a cassette with the digital download. So at that point, there were some clearly forward-thinking people that were already releasing things on cassette.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is just a tremendous album. Taking nothing away from the last album, Killers, the last one to feature Paul Di'Anno. I mean, that one had Ides of March, Wrathchild, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Genghis Khan, Killers. Great album, but I think after that, clearly Steve Harris knew that Paul Di'Anno wasn't really going to be able to deliver the true vision of what he wanted Iron Maiden to be. And I think at that point they were already scouting Bruce Dickinson from the band Samson, and they were going to be bringing him in. And man, they sure did too, because like this album is just tremendous. 22 Acacia Avenue, Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills, Hallowed Be Thy Name. Such a great album, and arguably still better to come from these guys. Like,
yeah.
I think this is a super important album, but they weren't by any means done yet. I can't help but see Hallowed Be Thy Name now and not think of the band Solar Flare that really wanted to cover that song live at that show and Louisville, was it, or Lexington, or Cincinnati? I can't remember where that was at now.
Yeah, wherever it was. It might have even been Columbus where we went and saw them. I think they were opening for Anthrax.
Yeah.
And they did this set, which was it was all right.
They were good.
Yeah. And when they got around to doing Hallowed Be Thy Name, they did the whole introduction and everything. And the guy at the place just pulled them off the stage. Like, nope, you guys are done.
Yeah,
we'll never know what that was going to sound like.
I'm sure it was good. That guy, the singer was clearly kind of like the leader of that band.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were fine. It had to be so mortifying to like go through this whole intro to it and then have the plug pulled on you like that. But yeah, I mean, this is a great album.
Yeah, just great stuff. And again, getting into the 80s, it's tough each and every week to pick just one because you're getting to the point where so many of these bands were either coming into existence or having kind of their magnum opus in the 80s. So look forward to where we're going to continue on as we move forward each and every week. But that is going to wrap things up for a wild edition of Music Weekly here on the Nerdcast Empire. Honestly, like, this was kind of an all-timer as far as the music content. You just never know what it's going to look like when Mike starts putting the list together each and every week. But this was one of, if not our best week ever for music. And all the bands we mentioned on this podcast, check them out, buy their physical releases. You can listen to the music online, kind of sample what they've got. But then support these bands with physical releases, buy their merch, go to see them live. That's what keeps music alive. We support that 100%. Don't forget, we'll be back 1 week's time with another episode of Music Weekly, the music of June the 7th, coming up in 1 week. As we mentioned, big shoes to fill. And, of course, we'll be back on Thursday with a Twitch-exclusive episode as we talk about Mike's ranking of the best anime themes of 2023. So looking forward to that, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Thursday evening. Look forward to that coming up. Big thanks again to Mike for putting all this together. Big thanks to Chris for holding down the chat. Big thanks to everybody who listened in. Thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of this podcast. We'll be back with you coming up later on this week for another episode of the Nerdcast Empire. For the entire crew, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.